All right. First episode. Welcome to Fort Brains podcast. Let's do this.
Yes.
We're going to talk about BizOps. Why should you care about it? How can it help you scale AI and so on? I'm Ali.
And I'm Somil. Very good to have everyone here.
Exactly. Thanks for watching or listening to us. So maybe we start with very, very simple question. Why should people care about BizOps? What is it about?
Absolutely. So, March 2021, one news hit the headlines that a ship called Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal. And if you look at the whole context of why that happened, I mean, we knew that
So you mean the
there's
one
always a
that was
problem.
trying to do a U-turn in the Suez Canal or something?
Maybe they were. I think they just parked it, and there was a. It was a combination of strong winds, transverse winds, and some human error. It got stuck, and as a result, it really got stuck overnight, and almost 400 ships got stranded behind it. And over the next 6.5 days that it took them to move it from that place, it impacted close to anywhere between six to $10 billion to global trade.
Wow.
And when you look at these instances like this, and also that was not an isolated instance. If you look at a more major disruption that happened last 4 years, look at the pandemic. If you look at the wars, two wars now.
Big events across the world that were basically world changing in the past 4 years or something.
Yes, and then it's kind of begs the question: is it even possible to predict? Because what we see today, if I look at our daily lives, with whatever we have, the interest rates, whether we are looking at the cost of living, the different things, it's basically an a reverb of all these major events. So it's like, you keep throwing big stones in the pool, and then you have waves, the aftershocks. Because one of the kind of characteristics of black swan events is not only like it's not just these events which are unpredictable and high impact. They also create a cascade of events which are also unpredictable and have a huge impact. I think what we are living is some kind of a superposition of many different events that have been affecting. And then the question is, if you want to predict, what do you predict on?
No, but I think this is a good point, because to me, predictability is not the answer anymore. It's the end of predictability now, right? You can't really have a predictable plan, right? You can't
Yep.
just build plans and predict what's going to happen. No matter how good of a model you have, someone starts a war, someone starts, or not someone starts it, but someone sticks a ship in the Suez Canal and does things, or a pandemic hits and everything goes upside down. These are the big world changing events. But I think if you go look at the micro events happening in your local operations, that's on basically you get one every week or every day. There
Yeah,
is always some firefighting going on everywhere, right? And
absolutely.
the way I see it, the plans never really happen, right?
Yeah,
People just get
and I think
around them.
what caught my interest in BizOps and why we started digging into it is after COVID, there was a survey, and they, uh, as per the survey, most leaders, they accepted that they need to change the way they plan. I think overwhelming majority, I think 83% or something, they said that, okay, we need to change the way they plan, and we need to do it more frequently. We need to consider external signals. We need to change our planning and how we update the plans. And I think even what I find a bit ironic is, after almost 5 years of pandemic, we know that when you have a black swan event, the models won't work and the planning won't work. But what I find difficult to understand is, why can't we adapt our plans? I mean, we have seen what happens. We have seen how it impacts, and still we are still living in the same kind of world and technology where our plans are still static. We're not able to adapt them.
Isn't the problem the planning itself rather than the actual changing of the plan, the paradigm of just trying to plan and replan all the time, that would be a problem.
Yeah, and
Because there are cycles in planning. Plans are built naturally in cycles. They can't have days or minutes or hours in clock speed.
no,
You can't have that.
no. I think I think planning itself is one thing, but most of the plans are built on predictions, and if you can't predict over your impact horizon, basically, I mean, we have seen a few companies who have very complex supply chains, and things are like your products are over a ship for 2 3 4 months. In that case, that's your impact horizon. I mean, once the ship is there, you can't, there's nothing you can do about it. So your planning horizon is at least 4 months, or maybe more than 4 months if you want to really take any action. And if you're built on your plan is on predictability, and as we have seen, if you have such black swan events and their after effects, I think now we have two hurricanes that hit the US coast. When you have these events, what is the probability that a plan will hold, and what's the confidence, what kind of confidence can leaders have in the planning process? I think that's one of the big questions.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the key problems I see as well, and we discuss it a lot, that people are trying to just put AI on top of these broken plans or processes. It just makes it worse, right?
Yes.
Like adding AI to your planning system, planning solution that doesn't really work. It's built for the best scenario or best case event. You don't really get anything out of it, right? You don't get any results, you don't get any scaling, you don't get any value, and just you basically amplify the problems you had. You make a best plan, but like really adapting on a day-to-day basis never happens.
Yeah. So basically, you have a bad plan, and then you take it through the most modern AI, and then you have a modern plan that doesn't work.
Exactly. Still doesn't
Instead
work.
of that, I think if you talk to people who are in operations, they would say, okay, if I could give us a semi decent plan that is more up to date, they would prefer that compared to a really perfectly orchestrated plan that doesn't work.
Yeah. The
And
other problem I see is that most plans are built centrally,
yes.
right? But actions don't happen centrally, and there is a disconnect between you do a big plan centrally, and then how do you really propagate that into details and the day-to-day decisions of operations?
I think this has been one of the challenge that has been flagged by many different leaders that we have spoken with, and there are two types of delays. I think the first set of delay comes when you're trying to haul the data, all the information that you need from all across your operations, and I think that part, if you have a good data architecture, if you're good platforms, and I think that part becomes very easy. But then it still gets stuck until the next planning cycle. There's no one to pick it up, and if through some miracle somebody does pick it up and maybe flags it or analyzes it and comes up with some kind of a decision, approval, whatever process that goes in, it again gets stuck in the execution queue, because there is I mean, getting a plan and putting it into operation, I think, is something that almost everybody has flagged as one of their biggest concerns.
Yeah, I think just simple example is that like we do a forecast for next month, and then we wait until the end of the month and say like, did we make it? No. What are we going to do next month? Right? And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, did we make it? No. What are we going to do next month?
Yeah.
Without having this real time knobs that you can just turn around and make things happen in real time. And that's where BizOps comes in, right? And then giving you those adjustment knobs to adjust things as you go and be able to have that smartness adaptability in your operation. So
Absolutely. I think
how
we
do
need
you
to also
describe BizOps?
contrast this with I think what we spoke with one of the leading payment service provider, and I think they gave us a very different picture. They said, okay, we have got like 1 billion plus transactions flowing through our systems every day, and we have like a few milliseconds to detect if a transaction could be a fraud or not, and then we have to make a decision that to either block it or let it through. And then it doesn't matter what decision we take. If we are wrong, there are significant costs attached to it. So it could be like, I have an angry customer, with holding a VIP card and who's really angry that his transaction is not going through. On the other hand, you might have someone who says, okay, well, it was a fraud, and they're asking for a chargeback. So I think when you look at this kind of scale, and when we look at, I think this example really illustrates the contrast of how feeble or how weak the planning is when it comes to these kind of high frequency, high impact decisions.
Yeah. How would you define BizOps as a solution to this then?
So I would define BizOps as a way to bring the business processes, the decisions, the data, everything put together, and bringing it closer to the operations. So it's kind of a inverse of, or it's a opposite of, not opposite, but it's mostly a complement to planning. So in planning, you basically take all the data into one place centrally, and you are basically making a plan and trying to distribute the plan. But in BizOps is a way where you can actually take your decisions, and you basically push your decisions to the edge of operations where action actually happens. And when you do that, you see that, okay, you can react to signals more in a much more faster way. We are able to uh, quantify and take different types of decisions at scale. We can empower people on the edge. I think this completely changes the paradigm.
Exactly. The way, if I summarize that, what BizOps does is that basically enables you to orchestrate all the micro decisions on the front, and all the actions are taken towards what your strategy is, what your plan is. But also over time, it can lead into operations led planning, right?
Yes.
You already have enough knowledge, have enough data, have enough intelligence in your system that plans come together automatically, rather than you make a plan and try to push it down. And then you just basically adjust the knobs and try to target different things and adjust the KPIs you want.
Exactly. And I think if you look at BizOps, it's not really one thing. If you look at the whole history, I think BizOps has now evolved as a discipline. There are more than 9,000 professionals who are working on BizOps today. So it has really grown into a very into more or less a different way of working. But we still think that there is a lot of scope in what BizOps could be for the future of the enterprise. Of course, I think today the whole landscape is dominated by ERPs, right? So how do you see BizOps? Do you think they can coexist with ERPs, or do you think they're going to replace ERPs? What's the point of view on that?
So the way ERPs are built are based on modules, right? They have different modules for finance, supply chain, logistics, and you name it. To me, the way BizOps works is that right now it creates sisters in operations. But BizOps by nature is agile and a microservice based compared to ERP, that's a big monolith system and mostly like a database and registers and small actions going on in it. So they will coexist for the time being. You need both. You need planning. You can't get rid of planning overnight. There are companies who spend a lot of effort now to move away completely, go to a microservice structure, having small independent operations going on, but that's something that BizOps enables in the future. And then over time, some of your ERP systems could become one of those microservices that basically do a job, but everything else does their own job, and you can basically have a completely federated setup. So that's how I see it. I think BizOps in the short term will focus on the front lines and making things happen, basically helping people take the best decisions, or as we say, look into the next best action, understand that. And that's what we believe, that BizOps will be the best way of really realizing that across an operation. but also integrating these decision AI models, these agents, and so on into operations, because you can't really have agents in the planning system. They don't work.
Yep.
What would the agent do in the planning system? Just plan and replan and replan and replan. That doesn't work. But agents need to take actions. And BizOps is the way to enable all these AI agents to take actions.
Absolutely. And I think this is not just with ERP. I think we can also learn if you see how e-commerce is going, and we already talk about this mark architecture. So we talk about microservices, API driven cloud, and headless. And I think this is what has happened because of the intense competition in e-commerce platforms had led now almost every major platform provider to aggregate their monoliths into small services that you can call independently. And you basically have a new commerce as a service. I think it has created. So do you foresee ERP as a service? Because I think composability is also a trend. I think Gartner mentioned it 2 or 3 years ago, that composable enterprise, and they also built a whole architecture with packaged business capabilities and many different components, that how Gartner sees composable enterprise. Do you see we can see ERP as a service or finance as a service?
So ERP as a service might be challenging because it's built for being a giant monolith. It's the whole structure is that, right? But turning operations into composable parts is what I see. And then planning, financial planning as a service. There's a lot of solutions for that, right? A lot of more agile solutions than normal ERP system. There would be similar things for sales operations. There will be similar things for marketing operations. And then there would be an ecosystem of all of these working together and interacting with each other, rather than you having to push yourself to put everything into one place. Especially if you're like a slightly more traditional company or been around for a few years and have done a few acquisitions, then you're basically copy pasting a lot of central systems that don't necessarily talk to each other. And you're always chasing a dream of one ERP that never
Yeah,
happened.
that's something which I was coming to next. I think over the last 10 years, we have seen many companies announcing this one ERP, one PLM, one CRM initiatives. And I think they start with a lot of bank, then over a period of time gets like it doesn't go anywhere. Essentially, they get stuck into operational complexities. And I think we have seen some of these challenges as well, that localizations, and we talk about acquisitions. I think a lot of things comes in the way. So, for the CIOs out there, the CEOs, the COOs out there who are actually looking for, because I think one ERP, one PLM is not really a strategy. It actually comes from the need to have some kind of a control, or some kind of a standardization on how companies could work, so business leaders can make
It's with
sense of their
wishful
decisions,
thinking.
right?
That's how I see it. It's
Sorry.
wishful thinking, not
Yeah.
strategy.
So how do you see that? How do you see, like, we know that it has not worked in the past. So do you think it will work? There's a probability that this would work, or do you think the leaders will realize that, well, enough is enough? Let's try something else.
So I've met at least 2 or 3 companies in the past couple of months that they've said, like, we realize we're never going to get there. We're just pouring money into a black hole that nothing comes out of it, right? So slowly companies are realizing that we need to find a way around this. Some people will put a data layer on top, as an example, right? Try to figure out how do we really manage all of this mess and multiple master data systems in your traditional ERPs. Can we make it a more federated data model? Sometimes that works, sometimes doesn't. It's very high maintenance, super complicated to really migrate to one. And as soon as you find someone else to buy, then that you basically to square one.
Yeah. So I think it's also, even if you don't, I mean, it kind of works in some places, in some regions. It doesn't work in others. And I think it also creates a bit of a mishmash, because there are some regions which have central reporting and their reports get generated automatically, and then there are other regions who have to basically slog with an army of analysts to basically get through the same thing, right? Another associated question, I think, would be AI and Gen AI. I think a lot of companies are now, if that's on the agenda. I think ChatGPT's success has brought Gen AI into executive agenda and board agenda, and now people want Gen AI for everything and Copilot for everything, right? And then also a lot of requests that we get is how do we scale AI, or how do we get value from AI? So what do you think about that? Because I think in most cases the ERP is like a blind spot still. People really don't think much about it. It's like the old furniture. It's there. You basically start putting things around it. Do you think is it possible to scale AI or scale Gen AI
So
with
the
these
way
large monoliths?
the way I see it, first of all, ERPs are built around information gathering and reporting. They're not built for intelligence. They're not built for action taking, decision intelligence. So a lot of people are trying to architect themselves around their ERPs to basically not get slowed down by it. But scaling AI itself is easy. You just buy a lot of compute, a lot of cloud services, and so on, and you have very fast models. But is the value being scaled? Probably not. And I think that's the challenge many companies face. They talk about scaling AI, not scaling the value of AI. And scaling the usage of AI in their companies or their customers. And that's where we think, and I think, again, concepts that bring agility, but also tools to bring that action and decision models into your hands. Using things like agents and so on the edge is the way to go. So that would probably, I would say, there will be a lot of AI initiatives connected to ERPs in my mind. But do they really move the needle? Most likely not. There will be basically some cool looking demos that you could show and make fun of, or go to your conference and say like, oh, we have this in our product. That's it.
I think a lot of pilots being flown around, and a lot of technology assets being created, which need not really translate into business, into real value. And when I say real value, basically top line or bottom line benefits or improvements, right?
No.
I think,
But
and then
ultimately, scaling AI is about changing how you work.
yes, that was the next kind of section that we'll talk about. So the culture and ways of working. I think ERP has also imprinted its siloed ways of working on the organizations. I think it comes back from the most people don't really realize, but when you use things like register or memo or dropping a pin, we actually were talking about a very very old technology where we actually had paper memos that were passed from department to department, and department basically interestingly was based on the room sizes and how many people can sit in a room, and then that became one division and then another division, I think, and that kind of ERP modeled after that, unfortunately. And then it has been reinforcing the same pattern of silo and division. And what we've also seen is the planning becomes complicated because of the structural challenges of the ERPs, but also the dynamics that we spoke about. And that's the reason why it's so difficult to operationalize anything. If AI or scaling value is becoming a challenge, right? So what do you think would be, what could be a way out for companies? And let's also talk a bit around the BizOps framework of BizOps we are working here. Do you see how do you think the business could change their ways of working and how they're organized to get more value out of AI?
Yeah. So I think the first thing you need to do is to come to a realization that, first of all, most of the successful companies in the future will be software driven, and all software in the future will be AI driven. That's just a fact that everybody needs to accept. The other thing that you need to understand is that in the digital software/services world, the value is not created in your vertical organizations, in your silos. It's actually across those. You need to understand that, and that means that you need to start adding agility into your system. You need to be able to not only plan, but also work with how do we really go to value fast? How do we organize ourselves around value quicker? The other angle of all of this is looking at how do we really take our operation to become more competitive advantage. Because for services, for service experience, if you're creating an experience around your service, connecting to what AI does, you need to be able to really have a very good operations to deliver that. You can't just put a chatbot in front of your customers and say like, everything's solved, now they have a chatbot. That doesn't work, right? There needs to be a very, very strong operation behind it. And instead of just doing reporting and understanding, just saying like, okay, what's going on? Managements need to make decisions at their level, but there is thousands and thousands of micro decisions that needs to be done at each company. How do you really add AI to those? And you can't do that without BizOps, so in my mind, because you need to move agility just beyond software development and into real operations of a company.
I think this is something where we have seen challenges. Agile transformation stop at IT or data, but they really don't get propagated into the actual operations, because the operations are still very slow and based. Because there is no other way. I mean, if I want to create an order, if I want to do something very, very basic, I think we called it the tyranny of the systems, right? It's basically what my Lord ERP commands me to do, or allows me to do. That's exactly what I can do. And we see, I think we spoke about service experience, and when we talk to the people in the operations who are the frontline units in the field operations, they really struggle, because for them, okay, I have an opportunity, and I can deliver this product and this service combination to the customer. They're really asking for it, and I can give it a price. But oh my god, I can't enter it into my system. And by the time I get someone to fix it, first of all, I'm not sure if I can do it as well. Will the templates allow? Is it as per the process? And so many different challenges. And by the time I basically raise a request and get done, the opportunity is lost. And then when you have a lot of these people, the answer so far has been to come up with new modules and to come up with new systems. And I think the problem still remains. It's not really about the system. It's about letting people decide what they want within the guardrails of the processes, right? Within the guardrails of governance. So I think as long as you are within those guardrails, you should be free to do anything you want. That, I think, for me, that is adaptability. But then the system should be smart enough to tell me if I'm basically deviating from the guardrails, and I'm basically crossing, and then that's where the governance comes into picture. So I think I agree with you. I think when we look at the service operations, service experience perspective, you cannot impose a template. You can't impose a system and say, okay, this is how you do it. This is completely, I mean, it's against the whole concept of service.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that you said is interesting, is that bringing that agility. I remember we talked about processes with someone, and you can do a lot of process mining. You can go look at, how do we optimize this process, that process. But then they were saying, like, we have all these processes that look really nice. Nobody follows them.
Yeah.
Because nobody can, right? They get stuck because it's too complicated to follow. They don't know what to do next all the time. They have to basically spend a lot of time figure out what to do next and how do they follow and comply with the process. But having BizOps thinking about setting things up in a structured way that basically gives you the next best action, that means that you can follow comply with processes, right?
Without having to think about it. I think the
Yeah, you don't need
compliance
to
should
even know
be,
what the process is, because
yes,
the system, and that's not a product, the whole company system takes care of that for you as a person.
exactly.
And if the process updates, the constraints or the guidelines of the process updates, the BizOps framework updates that automatically. So you don't know, oh, we just changed our policy to sell this instead of that. You don't know. You just get a recommendation. You need to sell this. Okay, done.
I think if you just try to paint the picture as an example, so imagine if you, instead of collecting all the data and then holding it and processing it and reporting in it and then analyzing it and then making it into some kind of plan and getting an approval and then basically communicating to the different teams and changing the processes, changing the IT applications to support that. I mean, that whole thing takes 6 to 8 months, maybe more. So if instead of that, if you could just have a system that takes all of that into consideration, and when you give it a request, say, okay, this is what I want to do, and it tells you, okay, you can either do this or this, right? And that two actions that you have created, you know that they are compliant, you know that they are approved, you know that they are based on the information, the latest information that we have. You know that those decisions are optimized because there are models which are running behind it, and I can very confidently choose one over the other, and that's completely my decision. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, and on top of that, it will tell you what the impact of each of those actions, what the predicted impact of those actions are, right? So not just these are the two, choose one. If you do this, this will happen. If you do
Yeah.
this, this will happen, right? And that's the beauty of it. You can see, you don't need to know. Like if I sit on the front line of sales, I need to know if I fulfill this order, what happens? Do
Mhm.
I have a potential to lose another contract because I can't fulfill another one that comes next year or next month or next week or tomorrow? I don't know, right? But that's what the system does, and you don't have to do that analysis yourself.
And I
And
think,
that
and,
would be
and
the
if you
beauty
look
of it.
at, if you look at most of the major decisions that are today plan driven, for example, choosing what amount of stock do you want to keep for every item, determining what kind of price do you want to attach to different products, what kind of margins or discounts do you offer to different customers. When we look at how do you ship, or what kind of channels or providers do you choose, I think these are the real choices that impact the performance of a company. And if what we're saying is, if all of these choices are already pre-calculated or pre-analyzed for you, and they're given to you along with the potential impact, imagine what the quality of decisions that can be taken. And I think that's where I think also the importance of embedding AI into the processes becomes very, very important. Because if you don't know that there is an AI, right, or you don't have to, the people who are running the process, they don't really have to know what the model is, as long as, I mean, they know that there is some kind of intelligence involved. Wouldn't that be great? Because then you can simply give a feedback. You say, okay, does it work or does it not work?
Yeah, you can simply just say, I accept this action, or I reject it, or I adjust it, or I escalate it, right?
Yeah, and the system will learn from that. The system will see what was the impact of the action. Was it closer to the projected one or not? And if a humans, if a person consistently taking a decision against the recommendation, that it could even prompt it or learn from it and say, okay, why is it, what am I missing? I think the whole system can become a more a learning system. Isn't
Exactly.
is isn't that what we are looking for? So then if I just try to summarize what we've discussed, we really see the monoliths of the ERP breaking into more microservices, into more smaller delivery units. We see the culture that is going to be more value stream oriented or more value oriented. We see more focus on service operations, service experience, more agility and flexibility. We can see AI can be embedded and can be scaled within the processes. I think you really made a great point that we don't want to scale AI, we want to scale the value of AI. And I think if we can make better decisions, then definitely the value can be scaled. I think we spoke about agents and how they could really help simplify the operations, how they could take over more responsibilities. And I think we also talk about the composability and how can we see the ERPs becoming more responsive and more flexible, and really aligning with the needs of the business rather than dictating how things can be done, right?
Exactly. And I think one other thing to add on the agents part, they really need somewhere to act on. You can't just build agents as a customer service support agent. That's good. That can work. That can create quite a bit of value. But day-to-day actions and this decision support is something where the agents can really scale the value.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I also missed was the next best action. If it's possible for us to tell people in the frontline unit, based on the processes, based on the governance, based on the strategy, based on the inputs, intelligence, here's the two things that you can do, and here's the impact. I think that could really simplify and amplify the impact of data and also of people, I think, because people, you can really leverage people's knowledge and experience, in a good way. I mean, we see a lot of people who are just working on data and doing non-meaningful tasks. I think it could also scale, give more meaning to people.
And if there's one thing I want everyone to remember from all these conversations we just had, is next best action.
Yes.
Right? That's what matters. How do you get your people to take that? How do you get your people to understand that and make it easy to deliver that? So that's basically the outcome of everything you want to do as a company, as a business. You want your person and people and staff, no matter if it's frontline or everywhere else, to take the next best action. How are you enabling that in your operation?
Absolutely. So I think this was a great discussion. I think now we should wrap up.
I agree.
And I think the next best action for audience, I think, would be to subscribe to the podcast. And we will be coming up with more content around BizOps. We will be also having guests on this show so we can get different perspectives in. So just tune in, and it was great presenting to you, and hope you have liked it and hope you have enjoyed it.
Thank you. And I can leave you with a teaser that we're going to talk about how a couple of famous companies are building BizOps without knowing it next time.
Whoa.
So let's talk about that next time. Thank you so much.
Thank
Goodbye
you.
from me.